overview of Men of Color. So with Men of Color, we're looking to increase the diversity of Blacks and people of color in tech. We recognize that there's a huge gap when it comes to the knowledge that already exists in the tech ecosystem, and the people that are getting into tech these days, especially from different parts of Africa. And so what we want to do is we want to break down those geographical barriers and give people access to the wealth of experience that already exists in this space. We're doing this primarily through mentorship. So we're building a platform to scale mentorship to everyone, to people across the world. Thanks to the remote first work culture that has been introduced by COVID, we've been able to redefine mentorship. And so we've been able to pull together, we're more like around 300 mentors from over 33 countries. Our mentors work for top tech companies, a few of them. And our mentors can help with both one-on-one sessions to guide you on your career goals, but also group mentorship sessions, which we host every week. You can get support both on leadership, on interview techniques, on like code reviews, project reviews, or just general career advice. And we have the whole spectrum when it comes to tech. So from front end to back end to AI to all the way to product. Like I also mentioned, we have weekly group sessions. So these are sessions that are around specific topics. Our mentors share their wealth of experience to a larger audience. So we encourage you to check them out and join some of these sessions. Good. So I'm gonna stop sharing and jump right into the conversation with you, E, today. We're super excited to have you with us, and I'm pretty sure everyone is interested in hearing some of the things that you have to say, but also ask some questions. So we're gonna give some space for that later on. We also created a Slido for you to ask questions, so we can drop the link right now in the chat. So I mean, just to get started, like you're quite a familiar face when it comes to the tech ecosystem in Africa, and you probably get this question a lot, but let's start from the basic. What was your journey into tech?
That's an amazing question. Well, if you asked me this question 10 years ago, the reality was I wasn't looking to come into tech. I was very focused on international relations. I think I was a pretty good lawyer. And I was just trying to, I remember at the time, I had become particularly famous for writing a paper, trying to prove that the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms applied to companies because companies were people. So that was the world I was coming from. Thankfully, what happened was I got involved in tech because I met a friend of mine who I'd actually met on the first day of school, and his name was Pierre Aris, and he was telling me, first day of school, was telling me about computers, all this stuff. Anyway, long story short, his ask was, well, can I stay at your house? And I was like, dude, I just met you. But I was like, whatever, I like you, so I'll let you stay at mine. So we became really good friends, but we lost touch doing cooperative education because he went to work in Silicon Valley and I was still at the University of Waterloo. Actually, I went to New York to work at the United Nations, actually. And so one day, I was running the school newspaper and we reconnect, right? Just randomly over at the student center. I was going to get my pizza like I do every day. He was stopping by for some coffee. We just jammed each other. And he started telling me about Silicon Valley. And that was when I knew, that was how I got roped into this tech thing. So, we started to work together. We ended up starting a company together, which nobody's ever heard of, called booknetter.com. And that was how I got into tech. It's been startup after startup ever since.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And it's interesting. Like a lot of people don't know about the ones, you know, that didn't make it big, you know, but it all started somewhere. So it's
one thing I'll tell you about that one is that, you see, Booknetter had very cool alum. So I mean, there's always Pierre. Pierre is a venture partner, a very large venture capital fund in the Bay. But it's actually, you know, one of the most illustrious alumni was a guy called Jairaj Sethi, who's actually the CTO of Substack.
okay.
He was CTO of Booknetter.com. So
Yeah,
that's just give you a window.
Yeah,
just give you a window into.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it was in some way kind of morphed into like a lot of successful companies, and you know, like the experience from there probably was like a huge driver for some of those later projects.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so like it's quite interesting though, like focusing on like international relations and like legal stuff and then getting into tech. Like, did you have to learn how to code to bring those ideas to life?
No. It took me a while. I did not learn how to code. I still am not the best coder you've ever met. But eventually, I mean, at first I didn't think I needed to, but over time I realized it was important to kind of understand what people were saying. So to the extent that I had to learn, that was it. So I kind of understand the lingo. I can piece one or two together, but I'm not the guy who's writing code.
Yeah, but you kind of like got your hands a bit dirty too, just to understand what is under the hood, right?
I definitely. I got my hands dirty. I wanted to understand what was under the hood, and yeah, that has helped a great deal.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. And I guess the other dimension of what I kind of observed is like most of your projects have been very focused on Africa. And yeah, and you also decided to move back to Nigeria at some point whilst you were in Canada. Like, why is that? Like, why the decision to move back and also like focus on like African-centered products?
Oh, okay. So basically what had happened was basically I when I met Pierre and we started working on Booknetter.com, it actually led me down a very interesting path. And that path took me to multiple other technology companies, including some that we built. But along the way, you know, I started to get a lot of technology partnerships, and you know, I started to think about a broader lens of technology. And I actually went to the Valley to spend some time. And I ended up working as an intern at this company called, it was a company called Zambado. Zambado was a very, very interesting company because Zambado was the first company. Can you hear me? I'm hearing some background noise.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
It's fine. So Zambado was a company that was focused on transaction advisory for governments. So if a government wanted to build like an airport, they would like help put it together. And so naturally, when I got there, the first day I was like, wow, this would be so amazing for Africa. Africa needs a lot of infrastructure. Wish somebody could like use tech to kind of figure out transaction advisory for government. Anyway, long story short, we tried to go for this airport deal. Airport deal didn't work. And I remember like everybody being super mad about how we had lost out on this deal. It was such a big deal for all of us, but we had lost out, blah, blah, blah. And I was just, you know, I was a bit perturbed. And then somebody on the team said something that disturbed me. The guy said, and you have to be an economist to understand the diss. It was like, well, you know, there's no opportunity cost to investing in Africa. And I just kind of sat up straight because if you're an economist, you understand the concept of opportunity cost is like, you know, if you do one thing, well, the trade-off is that you don't get to do something else. And then not doing that other thing has to be, you know, okay,
Yeah.
right? Because you're getting more here. So when someone said there is no opportunity cost to invest in Africa, I mean, that's like the most solid diss you could ever have. And so I think that was the day I made up my mind. I was like, I'm done with Silicon Valley. These people are crazy. I'm packing up my bags, and all I'm going to do is prove to these people that they missed out. And so that I came to Lagos and started a company with just that in mind. So, you know, I've just spent the last 10 years just trying to correct this.
Yeah. This is like one statement somewhere, and then it triggers like this whole chain reaction, which is which is interesting. And like, I guess like then when you kind of moved to Nigeria, I'm kind of curious, like I'm trying to push this somewhere. It's because with Mendocolo, we're really obsessed about the whole concept of like grooming world-class developers from Africa to contribute not only to the local ecosystem, but to the global ecosystem. And
Yes,
I know
yes.
that Andela also
That's
is kind of
correct.
like an African pioneer in this space, and you were part of that story. So like, what was kind of the journey like going there? Like, what were you trying to solve?
With Andela?
Yeah, exactly, with
Yeah,
Andela.
so Andela came after like a lot of frustration. So at the time, what had happened was I was running a company called Fora, another one many people didn't get to hear about. and you know, it was very painful experience because we're trying to build basically a platform that helps university students to be able to access courses from lecturers who taught in multiple universities. And anyone who's actually been in a Nigerian university can tell you that, yeah, like we're typically working in multiple different universities at the same time. It's like the funniest thing in the world. But the weird part of all of this was just, you know, as we were dealing with government regulation that was very unfriendly and so on and so forth, I took a trip to New York to meet with a bunch of investors. And one of those people was somebody I met when I was leaving the US, called Jeremy Johnson. And Jeremy, basically, you know, we had lunch and he was a dinner actually over, like just had salads at Fresh and Co on 21st Street. And he was telling me about how, you know, he'd been to Kenya and he had this image or this revelation that, you know, Western education and the way it worked was too expensive for Africa because you had to spend about, you know, easily $300,000 a kid. I mean, that's what the US is spending, right? To educate them. That's like, how are you going to afford that if you're a poor country? And then he said, you know, what was really the way it was supposed to work in countries that weren't as rich was that kids go to school, and because they pay taxes, you know, then the economy booms. So government can afford to foot that bill. But what happens if you don't even have kids with jobs? No one's paying taxes. So he basically said, look, why don't we try this skills-based, you know, education model where we'll teach you a bunch of valuable skills. You go find a job and we'll take taxes from you. And at the time, I thought it was insane. But I was like, you know, Jeremy had just IPO'd a company at $1 billion. I was like, what am I? I'm talking to a billionaire. What's my business? You know, my language would be like, you know, it's like, well, why do you care? So anyway, we figured out that, yeah, I told him, okay, if I go try this, would you fund it? It's like, no, yeah, absolutely, I'll fund it. And so we go try it. So myself and my team at Fora we recruit the first batch of engineers. But long story short, I mean, the big revelation for us was just how, one, it was just jarring for us in the first few interviews, how disrespected software engineers were. Because like we were coming from an engineering school, right? University of Waterloo is a big engineering school. We knew what it meant to be an engineer. We knew that accorded you special status. I was coming from Silicon Valley where engineers are like gods. Yeah. And then just to come to a society where an engineer was earning like 100, at the time it was $100, how the mighty have fallen. It was $100 a month, and the guy's giving no respect, and it was just crazy. So we're like, okay, you know what we're gonna do? I remember me and Nad, who's like one of my co-founders in Andela, he was like, look, what we're going to do is make sure engineers are respected in this country. And to be very honest, I mean, at one point, at first I was very skeptical of the model. But as we went along, I kept saying, you know, look, man, even if we lose all the money, all these VCs have invested in us, we did a good thing. I don't even care. And it's amazing to watch how quickly we were able to increase the incomes of a lot of young people, create a new middle class, and do a lot of things that had never been done before. So, like, I continue to be in awe of that business.
Yeah, and I think like that kind of opened the door for a lot of these models to kind of like spin off, because they also exist in different parts of the world, but like locally we didn't see a lot of that back then. And I think like that is obviously like it is generating a lot of supply on the developer side within Africa, and I kind of think like when you think about Andela now going forward, what are some of the what kind of role do you see them playing like in the ecosystem? Because that's still like they're kind of creating it, they're kind of pushing the boundaries, right?
Yeah, so I mean, Andela continues to run something called the Andela Learning Community, which is the largest network of learners, developer learners across the world, I think, actually. Essentially what the Andela Learning Community does is put you in a setting where you're learning with other people how to code and so on and so forth. So, I mean, I feel like that's more like a CSR initiative for them at this point, but it's still adding quite a bit of value. There's other important things in my mind that, Andela is poised to do in terms of, really identifying the best talent and helping put them together with the global workforce and work for global companies. And I think companies like Andela are still important. But I think the biggest thing Andela did and continues to do is to inspire new models of filling the capacity gaps in our technology ecosystem. So now you have Old School, you have all these other programs, you have Zuri. Yeah. So I think it might not be as big of a player as people might expect, but it's still playing a very valuable role after all these years.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that when I remember speaking to someone just like at a dinner party somewhere in Stockholm, Sweden, and they were like, yeah, like some of our engineers are like, we got them through Andela. So I was like, yeah, Andela is doing something here. So that's great. So I guess like just continuing down that path, like what are some of the other challenges that you see for the African tech ecosystem today? If you kind of just like, if you just want to like highlight some of those things that you see.
So highlight stuff I see where, sorry.
Yeah, I mean like some of the challenges that you see in the tech ecosystem today.
Yeah, there are many. I mean, from the outside, it seems rosy and we're raising billions of dollars and everybody's happy. But I think internally, there are three big challenges that I've been highlighting to anyone who would listen for the last 2 years. And it's number one, the biggest one is talent. We've grown far faster than the talent can carry us. And that's probably not a good thing, because, while you have a ton of money, what we've seen again and again in London, in San Francisco, this is the same drama in New York, is that when you have an industry where talent is scarce, the little talent that's available is overpaid and overworked, which is kind of weird to say, that's the same thing. But ultimately, innovation in that industry slows down and nothing really gets done. So that's a big problem. That's a big kind of thing everyone's keeping in their mind. But secondarily, the second thing is infrastructure. I'm in Lagos, and right now, if you work with remote engineers in Lagos, definitely send them lots of love and dollars, because it's not fun, no matter your income class, because you have to. The price of fuel has like jumped, over the last weeks thanks to the war in Ukraine. Your internet connectivity, which is kind of out of your control, has been pretty shitty. I had to go to a hotel to take this call because I wasn't sure the one in my office would hold. And there's just need for more devices. Like, people need laptops, people need computers, people need phones to be able to access the web. And there isn't any infrastructure for these things, right? There isn't nice places to stay that are close to work.
Yeah.
You're probably making a crazy commute every day. So these are things that need to be fixed, right? People need to be able to see nature, and go to work in a serene environment and be sane. Lagos can be an insane city, but also across Africa, the same challenges, perhaps just to varying degrees, right?
Yeah.
So these are the challenges. And then, the last one is governance. At the end of the day, the governance equation is a significant challenge, particularly because of the security front. Like, people don't feel safe here. And many times that's why they have to leave the country. And the continent. So I think we need better governance. We need a more competent state that can protect us and can encourage the good that we do. So, without resolving this talent, infrastructure, and governance challenges, I think the upside will remain pretty capped when it comes to African tech.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know from myself, firsthand experience, like being in Nigeria, like the internet is a huge concern. And I kind of just compare it to what I see in other countries. And we're supposed to compete, but like the infrastructure is kind of slowing us down. We have the people, we have the willingness, but some of these things are just like huge barriers for progress. So I think these are things that we definitely need to try to solve somehow. Yeah. And I would just give one last one because I know a lot of people want to ask questions and I don't want to steal all the time. I know there's a lot of challenges that we need to solve, but if you kind of fast forward 10 years from now, like when you think about such a future, what are some of the things that actually get you excited about tech in Africa?
So the things that get me really excited is the potential for tech to be a real productivity multiplier, right? In a way that the world has never seen before. So I like to say, take the best performing venture capital investment in the world, in my mind, is a mobile phone. Because, you went from completely unconnected to 1 billion users in 20 odd years, right? Over 1 billion users in 20 odd years, to, basically building 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 other industries that are all $1 trillion industries, right? To being so mobile phone companies are the #1 cap company in every single country on the continent, right? It's an incredible track record, right?
Yeah.
If you sit down to think about it, and you don't have an opportunity to build technology success stories in any other part of the world, but in Africa, that look and sound like that, right? I was telling someone the other day, I wrote on Twitter the other day, this is the only continent where you're going to have more than half of the world's working population, but today they're currently contributing 3% to GDP. So imagine, and we're 17% of the world's population. So if you really had a place where you could 10 times your growth, over the next 10 years, there's a lot more opportunity in Africa than anywhere else in the world. Now, is it easy? No. It's the most difficult thing. But I think there are a lot of things that are far more expensive and far less sure to do than to bet on Africa and hope it works.
Yeah, that's a really good summary of that. And I for one, I believe in the future of Africa. And like, I think that there's a lot that we can do. So let's do it. So I'm just gonna switch gears and take questions. So we have questions on Slido, but I also want us to kind of mix it up and get questions from the room. So if you have questions in the room, just use the raise hand feature in Zoom. I think it's there in the reactions, and raise your hand, and then we will try to bounce back and forth between Slido and Zoom. Cool. So I will start with Slido as we wait for people to raise their hands in the room. So the first one here is, so E, from your journey with Flutterwave, what is preventing fintech in Nigeria to go from payment bridges to providing fully functional banking services?
That's a good question. So there are three things in my mind. I think the first thing is solvable, which is just talent and capacity. So running a payment company and running a bank are two different skill sets. One is an exercise in innovation. The other is actually a real constraint, right? It's a constraint on regulatory constraints. Running a bank requires you to be a genius in compliance and weird instruments like Basel and CCA. What do you call that thing? CRR or whatever it is, cash reserve ratios and stuff like that. Treasury. So I mean, these are difficult things to do, right? And most fintechs don't have that kind of talent in their teams. So they need to go either buy or partner with a bank to be able to give them those services. The second thing is, I really question whether people want banking in a traditional sense. Like I feel like a lot of people say they do, but I feel like what people really want is control of their money. And I would be very interested in really understanding what it is people expect banks to be able to do for them. And how much discretion people are willing to offer to third parties to manage their capital on their behalf. And so I think that fintechs are being smart about remaining flexible about where it should go, right? In general, where their product should go. And then I think, especially with DeFi and some of the newer age stuff that's really fancy, that's flying all around, why would you put your money in a bank, even if it was a digital bank, when you could like stake it in Ethereum and have some protocol, giving you massive interests, right? And then I think the third thing is really one of the products. Products. The banking products have not really kept up with changing user behavior and needs, right? They haven't kept up with it. So sorry about that. The banking products haven't kept up with changing user behavior and needs. So right now, the question is how much relevance does a digital bank have in my life versus, a payment platform where I make payments from every day. And perhaps there's a way to meld the two, but one cannot underemphasize that they have different requirements from a distribution and scaling perspective. So particularly when it comes to touch points and when it comes to assets under management, it's like completely different business. Now, I'll offer a path out, which is that I think that if if fintechs were more open about partnering with banks, something interesting could happen. You know what I mean? So, so that's how I think about it. And I think of some interesting plays that could result when you say combine like a Flutterwave and an Echo Bank, or you can put a Stripe alongside a cross river bank or a big US bank. I mean, there's some interesting things that could happen, but it's ultimately dependent on where the leaders of these businesses want to go.
Yep. Thanks for that. So I think I'll alternate between those raising their hands also on the call. So Iyinoluwa, you're next.
Hi everyone. I'm a big fan of yours, Ini, so I'm a fidget to be while talking. Okay, so my question is that I watched the video of yours like a couple of weeks ago on Founders Connect with Peace, and I noticed you got into Waterloo, and when you were giving your story, you said stuff like you came from like a mid family and not like the most like the middle class kind of thing. So I was going to like ask, did you like get the scholarship, or how was the process like? Because like Waterloo's tuition is like real crazy, and like that's one of the schools I really want to get into.
Nice. So I'll tell you, so what I did was Waterloo has this really cool program called cooperative education.
Yes.
So I mean, cooperative education can actually give you like 15 grand or so. And then like 15 grand a year. So if you really kind of manage your room and board, you could at least cover your room and board. Stay with family when you go on co-op, try and do it in Toronto, buy bus passes, don't drive Ubers, just basic financial management. You can actually save enough for your rent for the year, because rent at most would be like $300 to $500, at least at that time, right? So there's that. And then second of all, I worked more than one job. So I did tutorials, I waited tables, once you're in the country, you can work, right? You can work some hours over the table and some hours under the table, as they like to say. So if you really hustle, you can do that. So I did a lot of that. My dad did pay, saved up enough money to pay some of my tuition, I think up until 2010. So the first 2 years were pretty much covered. And then the remaining 2 years, I was able to get some 6-month co-op opportunities that were able to pay for those, right? By simply not spending that much money on co-op in terms of like living costs. And they also have a scholarship. So I think they have a bunch of really cool exams. Like if you write, I got like 2 or 3 scholarships while I was in school. So it's really an exercise in resourcefulness. And I think it, in many ways, like that really prepared me for entrepreneurship, because you really got the sense that, if you didn't want the opportunity bad enough, you wouldn't be able to get it.
Amazing. Quick one, just to confirm. So the exams you wrote, it was like after you were in school, not maybe it's like entrance or like undergraduate entrance.
There are undergraduate entrance exams, but they were not for computer science programs. So the ones I got were bursary applications that applied to international students when I was in school.
Oh, okay, awesome. Thanks so much for that.
Cool. So I will go back to the Slido for one, and then I'll come back to the room. So this one is more, it's also quite a generic one. So it's about starting out, like when you're just starting out, how can you, so I guess what can those just starting out do to help identify and solve the problems around us, and kind of how do you suggest that people gain the experience they need to do so? So these are more for like people just starting out in tech.
So, I mean, when you're starting out, I think the biggest lesson I've learned in my own career is to really be eager to learn, to be very eager to learn whatever needs to be learned, right? And to be willing to put in the hours, because you don't know enough to like decide what's what's smart work and what's hard work. So just throw yourself at things and build your stamina. You know, it's like if you're young and you're training for a championship, you don't know not to train every day. It's like when you're an old person, you're like, oh, maybe I'll only train 3 days a week or 4 days a week because I kind of know what to focus on when I'm training. But like, just spend as much time as possible getting in your 10,000 hours of failure. Because my experience in life is you never get to skip that part. A lot of people kind of think they can work smart when they're young and direct their energy, but all you're doing is limiting your upside when you do that. So just throw yourself at the work. It doesn't matter whether they're paying you or not. It doesn't matter whether it's slave labor. That's everybody else's business. Just throw yourself at the work and get really, really good. And then you would have your pick of what you want to do.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Adewale, you're up next.
Thank you, Victor. Hello, Iyin. So I wanted to ask, you said we are going to be contributing to the world's GDP very soon. So how does, okay, let me use Nigeria as an example. How do we get past government policies? For example, we don't have constant electricity. So how are we going to be contributing to that GDP if we don't have electricity to work with? So how do you go past these government policies, infrastructure policies?
Well, you have to find ways around them, right? Like, you know, there is no power, but here I am on the call with you because I have to be, right? So I think once you recognize that the government constraints aren't going to go away because you complain loudly about them, your mind starts to change, which is, you know, how do you adapt to those challenges and eventually actually free yourself from the constraint they represent? Very recently, I actually I moved into a new home, and the first thing I did, I was very surprised at myself because I definitely wasn't thinking like this a few years back, but it was like, hey, who can give me a facility for me to get my home on solar so I wouldn't have to worry about solar in my home and power in my home. So there are all these solutions, and some of them can even be innovated by the people in this room. For getting around government constraints. Now, am I saying government is irrelevant or necessary or shouldn't change? Absolutely not. I've mentioned government is a huge challenge, but you cannot let the government be your ceiling. I mean, that's a very low ceiling for anybody who wants to accomplish anything in life. You got to find a way to blow past them.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Rounds. Yeah. Thanks. Ijama, you're up next.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Pleasure being here. I actually consider Iyinoluwa like a living legend. Pleasure meeting you or speaking with you, sir. So I love what you said. I love many things you said, like when you talked about just now that you can't limit yourself with respect to what's happening, government, like, because even when you complain, nothing changes. So we just need to make up our mind that we would move. Then I also love your perspective. I'm in the talent space, right? So I love when you talked about when you started Andela and you said you wanted to change the narrative regarding software engineers being paid 100K. That was like something that was on your mind. I was like, wow, like it was mind blowing to me. Like, oh, so it's who demands the skill that will now cause for competition. I mean, it was just mind blowing to me. So I also know that one key thing that is a major like headache for tech business owners is this thing of talent, right? I want you to, like, particularly in Africa, so there's this mindset like, oh my God, there's no talent in Africa. And I know there's one quote that Andelans used to quote, and they'll say, talent is everywhere, opportunity is not. Something like opportunity is not. I want to hear your thoughts regarding, finding talent in Nigeria. Like, was that a headache for you, Flutterwave and Andela, or not really because you people had the money? Or did you have challenges getting the kind of talent you needed in Africa? And also your thoughts regarding where edutech is going in Africa?
Yeah,
Just paint some picture.
Yeah. Sure. Can you hear me? Or have I
Yes.
lost you?
Yes, we can hear you.
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay. So I think that talent will always is continues to remain a problem. But at both Andela and Flutterwave, I think what set the company apart was we're willing to bet on very young talents, right? Unproven talent. But we also had masters in the room who were very experienced and could mentor. And I think it was that combination that actually delivered Andela and Flutterwave, right? So, at Andela, I was working with some of the best engineers in the world. Our CTO authored the book on Ruby on Rails. So like you really had like masters in the room, people you could learn from. But at the same time, you had obviously the whole business of Andela at the beginning was building young talent up. So like I said, you have to have that combination. So I find that many times in firms, there isn't that balance. There's oftentimes maybe all senior people, for those who can afford it. Like you said, the people with the money, because it's definitely not our companies when we're starting. Or you had very, very junior talents and no masters in the room. Either approach tends to backfire because you need someone who's teaching and someone who's learning for anything to work. So I think that's what I would say, But I think on a broader scale, also thinking platform-wide about talent helped us a lot. So in the case of Andela, running the Andela learning community and Open Andela, going into universities, building student orgs really, really helped us. And in the case of Flutterwave, encouraging young people to play with our APIs. I think we're the first company to have publicly exposed APIs, was also a way for people to kind of build expertise with our processes and our systems. And that helped us to even recruit some stars because they actually wrote our libraries and stuff like that. So I think a lot of it is engaging with talent in the right way creates opportunities. They're not easy to see if you don't do it, but if you do it properly and correctly, you reap the benefits.
Sounds great. So let's take the next one. Christopher.
Good afternoon, everyone. I actually consider this as a very good opportunity. These days, like we are having a lot of things now that tends to confuse beginners, like new beginners to this tech something. Like, okay, currently I'm trying to concentrate on ALS software engineering that was made free for African. And then there are still other free stuffs, you understand? How can a new beginner know exactly, figure out what he truly and the path he truly needs to follow? Because these things at the end of the day, it tends to now confuse beginners. Like they do not confuse, you wouldn't be able to know where exactly you should concentrate more. And how do we distinguish all these things? And how do we know the real thing to follow? And how do we know the real path to follow?
I think the biggest thing you can do as a young developer is to find a great mentor. I think a lot of people tend to skip that step when they're embarking on their journey, and there are a lot of people that are willing to teach. So being in a group like this is actually a great deliverance for you, right? Because you can at least learn from those who are in this group. But I think a lot of the time people think that having a mentor is like a shortcut. So you want your mentor to answer questions for you or to do the work for you. Like how you have a lesson teacher, you think you can just collect the answers to your assignment from your lesson teacher instead of doing the work to think with them and then having them guide you. And obviously that doesn't work. But if you have good mentors, they can tell you what to do. And I think that's the most important thing for most young people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
How
think
do
sorry, Christopher.
Yes, I wanted to ask, how do I get mentor now that I'm here in this group, sir?
Yeah, I think I can help even answer that. It's like that's why Mentor Color exists, and the platform is there. You can use it, and we have lots of mentors that are here to help you.
Which platform, sir?
Mentor Color.
Mentor.
We can drop
Please,
the link in the chat.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't
I'll-
realize not everybody was already on the train, but yes, Mentor Color is an amazing platform to work with.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Let's see if we can get one last, and then we will wrap it up. I think IK, you're up next.
Cheers. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. Hi, E. Always a pleasure to listen to you speak. I love a lot of the gems that you dropped here. Very, very powerful. So my question is related to talent. And I know Nigeria is currently experiencing a lot of brain drain. So recently I coined a term called remote brain drain, which is what I actually think we're experiencing. And I would like to know, how do we actually reduce remote brain drain on the continent?
I think the first thing is not viewing it that way, in my opinion, because when you think about something as a brain drain, then you're now focused on your efforts to manage, demand for your developers, as opposed to go look at deeper pools of supply. So I think it's the wrong problem to solve. People are going to move to jobs that pay better, and that's okay. What we need to do over the next 20 years, in my opinion, is really, do what India did in the 1970s and build properly structured and managed technology colleges all over the country, right? And if you do that and build the infrastructure to support it and actually do a proper job, you'll see the results. But there's no shortcuts. There's no managing brain drain. The reality is that people are doing this because of their growth. They might not say it, and a lot of people reduce these movements to money. But many of these people are actually earning less, but they recognize that because they need to grow as professionals, they need to go into pools where that expertise is available. Otherwise, they're going to be emptied out by the current system. So that's why a lot of them actually move. It's not even because of, the problems of the country. I wish more of them would admit that though. And stop pretending that it's because Nigeria is a bad place. That's why they are they are running away. Many of them are going because of their own professional growth. They want to be part of global tech companies where people who are better than them and more experienced than them can show them the way. So I think two things we can do, in my opinion. On the one hand, you can you can increase the pool of supply by going into universities. We haven't done enough outreach into the universities, helping the kids there, and building things up. So, I think that's very important. And I think the second thing, if you ask me, is working very closely to, design platforms that enable the development of already senior talents, right? Because senior talents, is important for us to maintain them and refresh them. And you find that if you're senior in this environment, you may be junior elsewhere, but you're so highly regarded, there are a lot of opportunities for you to grow. So maybe to the extent that one is able to provide opportunities for local talent, to find those opportunities to develop themselves locally, that would be good. But that also means that companies have to raise their game and be ready to spend money to hire even more senior talent from other markets. So yeah, I mean, these are things that we can do.
Awesome, thank you for that.
Any other questions? We're coming to the top of the hour, so I just wanted to.
Oh, sorry. I was actually muted and I was talking the entire time.
Sorry, it's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, so I just want to drop one last one. So you've mentioned, E, that you're a fan of Mental Color.
Yes.
I just wanted to kind of highlight, like, what is it that you love about what we're building here?
Okay, I mean, what I love about Mental Color is the focus on mentorship. It's extremely important. Mentorship is extremely important, and what I found helps a lot with these things is when we're able to support and encourage each other, we all learn much faster, right? I would obviously love for the ecosystem for Mental Color to scale, because, like I said earlier, technical talent is the biggest risk with this new wave of excitement about African tech. If you don't have the talent to deliver on what we are promising, we're going to be in trouble. In fact, I would argue that, I know there's a lot of focus on, being integrated into the global tech world and more inclusive workplaces globally. I think those are important conversations. But building our own pipeline of talent that can deliver on global opportunities, especially now that, the reality is pay has gone up globally. So you're not, you're no longer in a world where Flutterwave can pay just as well as Spotify. You understand what I'm saying? So what happens in that world? What's possible in that world? I think that's one of the things that I think we should be exploring as Mental Color, and seeing how it's possible to make sure it's our people who have learned from all these big companies that are coming back and contributing to building out the ecosystem and training the next generation of developers. Because like I said, what made the Andelas and the Flutterwaves work well was this partnership, between senior developers and junior developers.
Yeah, that's a really good point there. And yeah, I guess let's wrap this up. We're right on the hour. Thanks a lot, E, for taking the time and sharing all of your knowledge and experience with us, inspiring a lot of people in this call. And for those on the call, don't hesitate to participate in all the sessions that we have, book mentors on the platform, and use Mental Color as a super important tool to kind of upskill yourselves and your teams. And don't hesitate to reach out. And yeah, so thanks a lot for joining, and hope to see you around.